So welcome back to another month of amazingness. Well, it's on the part of our amazing trainers, I should say. You can see on the main topic area, we're going to be delving into the volume builder workflows in Cinema. But just wanted to give you a little reminder in case you wanted to re-watch the recording, and you can guess what I'm going to say. I should have a laminated card to say, here's what's coming next. But we've got the recording on our YouTube channel, as usual, Maxon Training Team on YouTube. So feel free to watch not only this recording, but the recording of all the sessions that we did last year. And also, we have on the Maxon site, if you go to the Learn button on maxon.net, I just wanted to remind you, you can test your knowledge of Cinema 4D for free if you go and just use the Cinema 4D elementary knowledge test. That's a 1 hour test. Just check out to see where the gaps in your knowledge might be. And also there are links on that page down to the list of topics, and we're adding more links to those topics for tutorials. Some of the wonderful tutorials that especially Darrin and Jonas are doing on Cineversity to actually explain those. And actually, Matt and Ellie have done loads of those as well. So who's the only one who hasn't done a Cineversity one? Anyway, so without more ado, let's hand over to Matt. And let's see if I can make you a presenter, Matt. Here we go. Beach ball already. This is good. Can someone make Matt the presenter?
I can try and make myself the presenter.
You could do that
somehow. Oh, there we go. Share main screen. Show my screen. Obligatory question. Can you see my rather colourful screen?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Right, I'm going to hide my webcam. See you in a sec. Okay, so what we are going to look at today, for those of you who have been, sort of like following our information and our social medias, that's what I'm looking for. You may have seen some of our title images. Simon was showing them off a bit earlier. What I'm going to look at is the part of the title image that involved building this cryo chamber, as we've called it, with the volume builder, and having a look at the volume builder itself for those people who have never kind of looked at it before, and just basic understanding of what the volume builder does, how you need to move stuff around, how you can add things in, take things away and stuff like that. We have kind of touched on it before, but different audience, different people, different methodology. So we're going to be having a look at that. For those people who have never joined us in any of these webinars before, do please stop us if we are either A, going too fast, or B, there is some question that you have that you want to cover that is in relation to what it is that I am doing. If you have things that you want to ask that are unrelated to what we are doing, we have a new potential way of doing that, but I will let Simon explain that a little later. So for the moment then, let's have a look at Cinema 4D R23. And you can see here is my pre-built one. There you go. That was easy, wasn't it? I'm done. No, we're actually going to have a look at how to build this up and the various different segments and sections in order to make this work. But first, let's just dive into the volume builder. So what is the volume builder? The volume builder exists up here, and we have two things. We have volume builder and volume mesher. So to start with, we are going to create a volume builder. And you can see quite excitedly that absolutely nothing really happens except that we have our volume builder icon and our object and our axes. What the volume builder does, it takes objects and builds volumes out of them. So let's create something. Let's create a cube. And you can see that this is a normal Cinema 4D cube. And we will drag and drop it into the volume builder. Now what that does, if you can see, it creates what I kind of describe as a really bad looking Minecraft cube. And the reason for this is it creates voxels. Now voxels, think of it, are volume pixels. It's pretty much how I think they smushed the two words together. So in a pixel, in a 2D image, you have pixels. You have height and you have width pixels. So you know, images are made up of resolutions 1920 by 1080, so on and so forth, and they are the little squares that make up the images that you see in front of you. Voxels do the same thing, except they obviously go in X, Y, and Z. So they go backwards as well. So you're getting this depth of 3D voxels. Now they don't exactly exist. So if I render, boom, they disappear. This is just a representation of the voxels that are being created as part of the volume builder. Now, if I want to be able to see this, what I can do, I can select my volume builder and I will create a volume mesher. Now, again, that just creates it separately. I could have hold down Alt for those people who want to know, which I may do a bit later. Drag and drop the volume builder into the volume mesher, and I get a slightly rounded cube. Huzzah, I hear you say, and why didn't I just create a cube with fillet on? Well, we'll get to that in a minute. Now, it's a very rounded cube in comparison to the original cube that was underneath, and this is because the number of voxels that are being made up, are being created in order to make up this cube. So, if we have a look at our volume builder, a voxel size of 10 centimeters means that it has a certain number, a large or a very small number of voxels in this particular area. If you have lower sized voxels, it takes more voxels to fill up that area, therefore kind of increasing the resolution. And you can see that that starts to curve its way, you know, rounder, but much smoother, much smaller. If I go to number 1 centimeter, you can see that we've now got almost exactly where we were with the cube, and the same number of sort of sharp edges as we had before. Great, huzzah. So for speed and size, I'm just going to keep that at 5 for the moment and get this slightly rounder cube. Now, what's the advantage of using this over anything else? Well, let's create a sphere, and let's put the sphere here, and let's drag and drop the sphere also into the volume builder. And here you can see this now merges together. I've got a very faceted sphere, and this is because at the moment the volume builder is working on the actual sort of polygon and surfaces that exist underneath a sphere and aren't being smoothed by our renderings and smoothings and fongs and stuff. But I can cheat that by going to the volume builder, selecting my sphere and clicking perfect primitive, and now I have a perfect primitive in the form of a sphere. So I now have these two blocks smooshed together, and it's all very easy because my sphere can still move in and out, backwards and forwards, up and down and whatever, and I can change its size. The fun part comes when I go to my volume builder, and I can see that I've now got you've got my list of objects that exist within my object, and I can go to union and I can choose various options, and I can go to subtract, which takes it away, and I can go to intersect, which will create the shape where the two shapes intersect. And again, this is all procedural or primitive parametric, so none of these things are editable, and I can still move them around and change and update and do what I want with it. Let's just go to subtract. Now, what is the fun part of this, and why would I use this over a bool, I hear you say? Well, our bools can be interesting to deal with lots of models, but they don't allow you to add things back in. So I'm going to create a cylinder, and then I'm going to put the cylinder back in to the volume builder. And now I have a cube minusing a sphere, adding back in a cylinder, which you couldn't have done easily any other way. And certainly if I want to kind of keep that gap in there as well. And again, it's all still, parametric and primitive, and I can move things around and I can angle stuff, or I could take that away. There's loads of stuff that you can do with it. Equally, let me add in a circle. Boom. So with this circle, what I can do, this is a spline, by the way, a circle spline. If I drag and drop the circle spline into the volume builder, you can see that I now get a thickness around that spline. If I want to change the thickness that that creates, go to your volume builder, go to your circle, and you can see you have a radius. So let me make that 15 instead. Sometimes you may need to increase and decrease the density. This is the number of, as you can see, sort of voxels that it creates around the spline in order for it to merge together. And boom, there we go. And I can move that up and down, and it's still part of that object, which I really like. It really allows for easy creation of models, of objects, and you start to change the way that you model. I know I have. I mean, I'm very much always been what they call a polygonal modeler. I've always done the points and the polygons and the edges and stuff like that. But this all of a sudden starts to make you start thinking, how can I make this shape out of stuff that is added together or taken away? And we've got some really good examples in the content browser, actually, of bottles and things like that, which if we've got time a little bit later, I might bring up for you guys to have a look. So that is very quickly the volume builder. And as you can see, we've got raggedy edges, and this can be increased or smoothed out by using various things. We can change the voxel size so that we get more detail, but that doesn't necessarily smooth things out. So I'm going to press this lovely button called the Sds Smooth. And what that does, that creates kind of like the 3D equivalent of a Gaussian blur. And that smooths out all of my geometry here. And you can increase and decrease the strength of that smoothness. You can choose different types of strength. You can choose the voxel distance, the iterations, the number of times it thinks about smoothing it so that you get better results, each of which will affect like playback times and things like that, and interactivity, depending on how much stuff you've got going on in your scene. So you can see if I increase the voxel distance, then it's going to blur out more and more and more, or if I decrease that, I can get a much sort of more subtle, shall we say. There is a mild disadvantage, I will be perfectly honest, with the volume builder, and you will notice this if I show you the polygons. Now, whilst it's nice, it's relatively good and it's clean, and most of it's quads, if not all of it, it does give you an awful lot. Now, by default, that can sometimes be painful, depending on what you are trying to do. If you wanted to UV map this, it might be tricky, shall I say. So what we can do to make life a bit easier, in the volume mesher itself, there is something called adaptive, 0%. And this is not labeled particularly helpfully, but this is the amount of polygons to create on the surface. Adaptive 0% means it will do absolutely nothing. And all I need to do is change that to 0.1. And you can see that it, fun enough, adapts the number of polygons that it creates. So there are a lot less polygons on the surfaces where less polygons are needed to create that shape. That is unbelievably helpful and has taken some of my models down from like 1.5 million polygons to 200,000, just simply by getting rid of the irrelevant polygons that it doesn't need on any particular surface. Okay, right, before I carry on then and go into how to create the cryo chamber, do we have any questions, or is there anything any of my fellow trainers feel that I need to add to that? Are you all still here?
Yeah, I can't think of anything. I think you're doing great.
Thank you very much.
Same here.
Cool. Right. Okay, good. Have we got any questions? Is there anything that anybody has come up with yet that would be a good time before I start going into the cryo chamber?
I'm looking over now.
Someone's asked, or Stephen Groff's asked, can each object have a different texture in the volume builder?
That's a lovely question, and that would be a lovely feature, but sadly the current answer is no. So the volume, each of these objects don't actually exist. They create the whole, which is this volume meshed object. So it is the volume mesher with which you will add the textures. Something similar to that and ways round that Ellie will be getting to when we get to texturing this, the cryo chamber. Anything else?
Just having a quick look. What's your criteria for choosing between volume builder and polygon modeling, from Andreas?
Ooh, good question. Output for me, if I'm perfectly honest, and I mean that I do a lot of 3D printing, and I do a lot of 3D printing with plastic printers and resin printers. So I need to make sure that my mesh is kind of watertight, and I can also do thicknesses and things. Plus, it makes life easier if I'm creating shapes. But half the time, I will mix the two. So I will do very basic polygonal modeling to get shapes that I need. And then I will shove it in a volume builder to merge everything together that will enable me to print it smoother. For me, I certainly wouldn't necessarily recommend this workflow for people who want to do lots of UV mapping or where polygon counts is an important thing, like gaming. I would certainly avoid it there. But for me, it's kind of like, will I need to smush more than one shape together in order to get this to work or to print? If I don't, I'll polygonal model it. If I do, then I'll do a mixture of the two.
Cool.
Anything else?
Had a couple of people ask, what happens if you increase the adaptive percentage? And like, if it goes higher, does it cause any problems? There was a couple of questions about that.
That is a very good question, and the answer is yes, it can do. That is not the right one. There we go. So let's have a look at my friend here that we've already created. So the adaptive of 0.1 is fine. If I make it 1%, you know, okay, we're starting to be okay. But if I turn off edges, see 0%, 1%, you're not really missing much there, which is quite good. But let's go 10%. Can you see the issue comes with rounder and softer edges where I'm starting to lose the ability of getting the increase in detail and shape. So if I put that back down to 0, just kind of focus on this central area here, it starts to become a bit more faceted, a bit more of a dirtier model, I guess I would say, sort of unclean topology. And if I whack that to 50%, I'm really starting to lose the number of polygons necessary to get that detail. Whack that up to 100 and we've really got something unpleasant. So, I mean, to be honest, I very rarely go above 0.1 because most of the time I want the detail, but I just want to get rid of a lot of unnecessary polygons on flat surfaces.
There is one thing we discovered here when it comes to the font shading with adaptive, with the adaptive parameter here. Sometimes, if you get artifacts on smooth edges, it might be better to leave the adaptive parameter at 0 and instead use a remesh generator and throw the whole thing into a remesh generator, because it seems like the remesh generator is better at preserving the font shading.
Oh, okay. So better, yeah, preserving the sort of edge and crease topology in order to lower the number of polygons, but keep everything where it needs to be. That's cool. So the remesh generator is here, isn't it? Yeah. So the remesh generator is there. I won't demo that right now, but for anybody who wants to experiment with that. So would you put the volume mesher into that, or would you make the volume mesher editable first?
No, I would throw the volume mesher directly into the remesh.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
I'm not going to risk that quite right now, just because I don't want my laptop to not cope with that right now. Not if I've got something to present.
Yeah, it needs to calculate a little bit. That's the advantage of the volume mesher adaptive sampling. You get the result instantly.
Cool. All right. Thank you very much. Right. If there's nothing else, then I will go on to the cryo chamber.
Yeah. So we've got a few more, but I'll kind of keep note of these and then we'll get to them after. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll do the cryo chamber because, to be honest, it won't take me an awful lot of time. I'm going to do it largely procedurally, just to kind of show you how easy it is to keep stuff in primitives and without having to worry too much, and the shapes that you can get really quite nicely. So let's go to File and New, and first thing I'm going to do is create a cylinder. Funnily enough, this cylinder will largely just be used as the outer kind of, or sorry, the glass part, and I'm just going to roughly guess its proportions there. And then, to be honest, it was really easy. What I did was I would just create things like tubes, sort of work on the thickness. And one thing that is good to be aware of is the number of rotational segments for things like this, because if I was to put this directly into a volume mesher and then builder, and I'm going to do this easily by holding down Alt or Option, depending on which keyboard you are on. So I'm going to create a volume builder and then a volume mesher. You can see it instantly disappears or goes funny, and this is because the volume builder voxel size. So I'm just going to put that at 5, maybe 1. There we go, that's a bit better, but it's exceptionally faceted. So I can look at my tube, and what I will do, I will just change the rotation segments to, let's have a look at 32, but I don't think it will be enough. So I always go to 64. And that gives you a much better rotational segment. Now, don't worry about the edges at this point for the moment. We will sort that. So let's just make sure that the inner part of my tube only goes to the outside of the cylinder. There we go. So I'm just going to match that. And then easy enough, I'm just going to put that in a cloner object. The cloner object, for once, I don't actually want it in a grid array. So I want it in a linear. And I'm just going to drag that to the bottom. And then I'm going to increase the Y segments there. Sorry, the Y distance that it goes up to something like 110. I don't want to do too much. I don't want them too many in the middle because I don't want to detract from what will eventually be there in the middle. And then I just created a cylinder. And it's really easy to just kind of put these things together and then just drag and drop them into the volume builder. Same thing here, rotational segment 64, bang. And just update this way. And because I've already got a cylinder that works for me, I'm going to hold down Command or Control, depending on which keyboard you're on. Click on the green arrow and drag that up so that I've got a second one. And this gives me a little bit more going on there. The base of mine, I just used a cube. And I used a cube down here and I made it a bit bigger. So let's make it 250 by 50 by 250. And I simply used a deformer in that. So I'm going to hold down Shift because creating a deformer inside as a child to the object, if you hold down Shift when I create it, it will create it underneath. So let's create a taper. And now with that taper, I can pull in or out. And because my polygons, my cube is only made up of very few segments, it gives me a nice flat surface rather than a curved one. So we've got that in there. One of the things that's fun to do, like I say, is like just adding in information, just like detailing in. And the way I did the base, if I bring up, there we go, my image, where's my image not selected? There we go. If we look at the base, you can see I've got this just sort of small ridge inside. I promise you this isn't made out of PlayStation Pros. It does kind of look like it's using the PlayStation as a base, but that wasn't my intention. It's just got this nice little ridge in the middle. So all I did was create a rectangle, change its plane. This means that it is now flat against it. You can, of course, rotate it. I moved it so that it was going to be roughly in the middle, and I can use my side views for this. So F4 or F3 will allow you to view your object by the side, or using these buttons up here for those people who don't know, And then I'm just going to press T on my keyboard to move to my transform tool or scale, click and drag in an empty space and drag it until it's roughly disappearing. There you go, and just bring it back. So I basically want it to intersect with the outside of that cube. And then, funnily enough, I'm going to drag and drop it into my volume builder, and that tries to add it to it, which is all very well and good. But what I want to do is, under my rectangle, I'm going to do subtract instead. Now, it's not worked, and this is probably because of the size of the radius that the rectangle is creating. So let's just whack that to 5 centimeters, and still it doesn't work. So let me just try. Ooh, what's going on there? Let's not subtract, let's union then. Density.
Yeah, that is strange because at first I thought I was seeing the effect you were going after. And then we switch it to subtract and it seemed to break down. Is it the size of the rectangle, Matt?
I don't know, unless it's done something odd. 209. Okay, let's reverse. Union works. So let's whack up the radius, 5. That works. Oh, I know what I've done. Helps if you put the cube in the volume builder, doesn't it? So it has something to take away from. So let's put the cube in the volume builder.
I was about to say, there was a couple of people helping out in the questions there.
Thank you very much.
Happens to the best of us, don't worry.
It does, yeah, certainly on your first day back after Christmas. So forgive me, I'm groggy.
This is what everyone tunes in for, to see us fake a problem so we can troubleshoot it live.
That's it. Totally faked, yes. So yeah, with the cube in the volume builder and with the rectangle, I can now do subtract. And I can now get this interesting sort of detailing occurring to make it look like I've built my cryo chamber on a PlayStation. So let's move on to just quickly adding a little bit more detail with the support struts around the outside. Amazingly easily, I'm just going to create, funnily enough, a cube, maybe not one quite as large as that, but let's do cube. And then let's shrink its dimensions to something roughly squarish. So let's do 10, 35, 10. And then, funnily enough, I'm going to put that also in a cloner. The cloner is amazingly helpful for this. Turning from grid array to radial. And then I want to increase my radius so that it intersects. And then I'm just going to increase my count to, well, 6. Don't want too many, as I say, because I don't want to detract from what will or will not be in the center. And maybe even with the cloner in the middle, you can change some stuff if you want, depending on how many horizontal bars you want. Let's not forget to put that in the cloner so that we get our nice sort of sturdy support. Now the fun part, the fun one of these, is going to be creating this tube. Now I looked at several different ways of doing this, and it was actually far easier than I thought it was going to be. So let's go to one of our side views, and I'm going to draw a spline. And I'm just going to make this the sort of wibbly spline that goes across there. And again, there are still several different ways you can do this. We could have the density changed to a correct number that would put it along the spline for its creation, but I'm actually going to create a torus. I was going to say donut then, but it kind of is. And I'm going to shrink that. And funnily enough, I'm going to add a cloner again, the cloner of donuts. And I'm going to take my cloner, and I don't know if some people are aware of this, but this is really useful. You can change your mode to an object, and you can say, I will clone my object, my torus, across this object, and that object I'm going to clone across is my spline. So drag and drop that onto the spline, and well, that's an interesting way of creating it. but not at all what I had in mind. So firstly, I need to rotate my torus. Now, can I do it this way? Yes, I can. So let's just rotate that to 90 degrees. And that gives me the sort of more angles that I was after. So under your cloner, you go to your transform, and I changed the P rotation, the pitch rotation for my torus, so that it is now perpendicular, I suppose, to the spline would be the correct terminology.
I just want to point out real quick, sorry to interrupt, that this transform tab that Matt is showing us, these position, scale, and rotation values are for the individual clones. You know, there's also in the coord tab position, scale, rotation, but that's for the whole cloner.
Yes.
But here, because he wanted to rotate the clones, he went to the transform tab.
Thank you. Yeah, so this is for how the clone is being created how the torus is being created within the cloner. So let's go back to the object tab of my cloner, and this is going to talk about how the clones are created along the spline. And at the moment, they are just done with a distribution of count. So I can just whack that up, and it goes a bit funny. You can see I've got great gaps in it. If I do step, it becomes a bit more even, and then I can increase the step, which is the number of, the distance between them. And if you decrease the step, you will get more of them. Now that torus is definitely too large for that pipe, so I'm going to shrink that down even further, and I'm going to decrease the gap in my clone. Now, because this is all still editable and movable, it's really easy that if I decide that I don't like the way my pipe is looking, then I can still change it. And because the cloner is busy moving, distributing its clones across the object, then I can move these and change these, and the cloner will keep doing its work and making all of those toruses intersect. I'm just going to shrink that just a smidge more. Whoop. And then what I can do, again, not forgetting, is put the cloner into the volume builder, and I get my nice sort of pipe work, ribbed pipe there. Now, that's the basic shape. Yes, I can add a few more interesting things, and maybe I'm just going to copy and paste that cloner, which is the radial cloner, because it's got all the nice settings in it, delete the cube, put a sphere in it. I may need to shrink that sphere just a smidge. And then I can move my cloner for that up. And we've then got that there. And I'm going to just command drag that down there so that I've got the stud work down the bottom. And I can put both of those in my volume builder. And we can see that we've got those in there. Now, I don't know if any of my trainer colleagues know of a different way, but because I'm using a cloner, I can't choose perfect primitive. So I need to increase the number of polygons in the sphere. Does anyone know a way around that?
You're doing it the way I would do it.
Okay, so I'm going to do that 32, and that creates a much smoother looking sphere in order to merge with the volume builder. I can't do what I demonstrated earlier, which was make perfect primitive, because technically I'm using a cloner and that overrides the primitive information. So almost there.
Can you show us real quick where that perfect primitive setting is?
I can. I did in my demo.
Oh, okay. Never mind then. Never mind. Thank you.
That's all right. Yeah, where am I going? So under the Finder, if I have a look at my image, you may notice that my outward sort of framework is a bit distorted. Now, I did this because I wanted this kind of look to look a little bit weathered, like this was going to, I don't know, explode at any particular time. So if I take away my cylinder itself, you can see that this is looking very rigid and very nice and sturdy. So I want to change that, and I also want to smooth it out just a smidge. So what I'm going to do under my volume builder, let's create a Sds Smooth to start with, and you can see that that really smooths far too much of everything, because the way these smoothing objects work is they smooth everything that is below them in a hierarchy. So if I didn't want it to smooth something particular, I can move it underneath and it would then have no effect. So you can see that those spheres down the bottom are not quite as smooth as the ones above. Now, the one that I actually want to not smooth is the pipe. So let me figure out which one is the pipe again, which is that one. Call it pipe. Hint, labeling things in 3D really helps. And this pipe, I'm going to move above the Sds Smooth. So now I have that which is not being smoothed and everything else which is being smoothed, still, to be honest, way too much. So looking at the SDF Smooth, I'm going to just limit the voxel distance a bit so it's not quite as harsh in its smoothing, and maybe lower its strength. That still gives me a better smoothing shape, but I still haven't got the weathered look yet of the objects that I want to create. To create weathered look, I'm going to create another object, another filter layer. And this time, rather than using an Sds Smooth, I'm going to use our little drop-down triangle, and I'm going to create a dilate and erode. Now, dilate and erode makes things puffier or makes things smaller, depending on the offset that you create. So it increases or decreases the size of the object that you are, or the objects that are once again below the object that below the filter layer. Now, I'm going to move that there just so that it's not going to smooth. I'm just going to turn off the smooth just for speed for this particular element. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to offset my erode. Actually, no, the first thing I'm going to show you is, at the moment, this is just puffing up everything in one big go. What I can do, I want to limit this to particular areas so that it is more puffed or more eroded in some areas than it is in others. And to do that, I can use fields. So if I go to fields, and that is under the dilate and erode options, and I'm going to scroll down because I'm going to create a random field. Now, random field, as you can see, will use basic noise in order to create a weathered look. But this is, once again, creating it all over the object. Now, I can limit this to different areas, again, just by choosing the hierarchy. But if I've got several options that I'm sort of happy with and I want to limit it to a specific group, boom, then we can use a folder. So let's create a folder in our structure, and then I'm going to decide the things that I want to be in that structure. So I want my first cloner in that folder, and I want the two cylinders because they are creating the top and the bottom. And you can see that because I'm taking these out and the dilate and erode is below it, I'm able to check which ones I want. So let me just put that in there as well, which is the, yeah, and those, and those. So pretty much most of it, except the base. But this is the particular part that I want to be weathered and eroded. So now what I can do, I can take my dilate and erode and I can drag and drop it into my folder above all of my objects. And now it will only dilate and erode that particular part. So I want it to look like the canister is a separate object to the holder that I've got below. It's a little bit much, that dilate and erode. So let's go back to my filter. Let's perhaps change it to 2.5 so it's not quite as crazy. And then under my fields, under my random field, I want to increase the scale so that it is less obviously bobbled. So let's just try 250 scale, and that increases the scale and makes it look weathered in some parts and not in others. And there quite quickly, I say quickly, I've got 20 minutes left, you'll see that we have created our cryo chamber for the rest of our series. Right. Anything that anybody wants to add, or do we have some questions?
We did have a question earlier about putting different materials on these bits.
Yep.
For example, in our, sorry.
We did answer that, I think. It's not currently possible to create and put different materials on a single volume mesher whilst it is like this. You can, of course, make it editable and then select polygons and do it, but that is tedious.
Indeed.
It is. Yeah, any other questions from anybody?
Also, I will be texturing this exact thing in the 3rd week, so that might help answer the question.
Thanks, Ellie.
That's okay.
Anything else?
Checking.
Alexis is asking, is there a way to optimize the scene? It seems to make the scene very heavy.
To be honest, that's going to be largely down to what I mentioned earlier, that the adaptive will help create less polygons, but that's volume meshing for you. You just create polygons. You can, if you want, you know, whack the volume size up to 5 in order to have a faster look, but of course you will change the look when you change the number of voxels that you get, so you've got to be aware of that. Other than that, that's pretty much it. It's just got to think about that amount of stuff merging together.
Yeah, when it comes to animation later, you can cache the well, the volume builder. That is possible.
Also, a little tip that I use, so in the volume builder, obviously the voxel size at the moment is 1 centimeter, which is actually pretty good to work with. You could actually increase that. Obviously the resolution will be lower, but if you want kind of like the faster playback and the faster like Cinema 4D to work, you could just increase your voxel size, and then when you go to render, reduce it back down.
Yeah.
Also, sometimes when you're working, when your setup is becoming more and more complicated, like if you add a lot of smooth filters and dilate and erode filters, this will slow down the volume calculation a lot. What you always can do, you see it now in the lower right, is to uncheck auto update settings and only update manually using the button if you want to. So you can move objects around and so on without an update every time. And when you feel like, okay, now would be the right time for another update, you just hit update and it will calculate through the whole thing. This will speed up the process a lot.
Otherwise, as Jonas says, if I turn that on and automatically update, if I just, you know, grab one of my cylinders and then try to move it down, it's got to go, all right, okay, now I need to recalculate. And that was actually quite fast. But if you've got, yeah, lots of filters and lots of dilates in a row, lots of complicated geometry, that recreation might just go, I'm going to process for a minute or two. So that's a nice little tip, to just be able to turn off the auto update so it's not doing it every time you move. Okay. If there's nothing else, I mean, I know I was going to talk about quickly about hollowing things out for 3D printing, but shall I pass over to Darrin to talk about volumes and sculpting?
Yeah, we actually did get a question about with sculpting. So I think I can show this quick tip pretty quickly, actually, and then we can jump back and you can show how to you know, get that interior.
Oh yeah, how to hollow stuff out if people need to. Right, Darrin, let me just find you in the list, or is someone else finding Darrin? Okay, so
there we go.
Okay, I just finding the list.
All right,
how many people does it take to click on a button?
Okay, can you guys see the cube on my screen?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. So this is, so I've switched to the sculpt layout. In Cinema 4D, I got a whole bunch of layouts, but I switched to the sculpt one. And what I want to point out is right here, there is this volume mesh command. If we, let's see, is it up here? Well, it's got to be somewhere in one of these menus. But what this does is it basically allows us to convert a sculpt into a volume mesh. And let me show you why that's a good thing. So I'm going to make this cube editable, and with smoothness of 100%, I'm going to use the subdivide in the sculpting layout. And let's go up to level of 7. And that's, you can see that's really dense. So why do we have this command? Okay, well, here's the deal. Let's do this. I'm going to just drag out some horns on this guy. So let's go symmetry X and bring that down. And I'm just going to pull out these horns. Now, I want to add some detail in here. So I'm going to go to my content browser under presets, the sculpt brush presets, and then I'm in the organic folder, and I'm going to say skin 05. I'm going to double click that, and it's going to load the sculpt brush preset, which is part of the pull brush. And I'm just going to increase pressure. I'm going to just right over the main sphere bit here, just click, and you can see how we got some detail as it appears in the preview. But if I go to this bit, which I pulled out, it actually starts to get stretched. And this is because the grab brush, the pull brush, I mean, all we're really doing is taking the points of this mesh and just pulling them out. So it's stretching these. And this is where this volume mesh command can help us add some detail by giving us a more uniform distribution of polygons so that they won't be stretched like this. So let's, so I'm going to go to the volume mesh command here and click on the little gear icon. I set the voxel size to 1 and smooth to 100. And I'm going to hit, you know what, actually, let me undo these those guys there. Okay, so let's go back here, voxel size 1, smooth 100, and hit OK. And you see, it appears as if the only thing that's changed is the sculpt tag is gone. But let's see, if I take that skin, that skin sculpt brush preset again, come in here, and now when I start sculpting on this, I'm getting a cleaner result. It's not stretched out as it was before. Now, I want to point out a couple of other things about this command real quick. This keep objects. So let me undo. I'm going to go back to before. Here we go. So I'm going to do the keep objects. And I'm going to go with the default voxel size, which I believe was 10 centimeters. I'm going to hit OK. And what you can see is that it's actually giving us the original volume objects. And this is a good way to sort of feel out what voxel size you want. And then once you find the size you like, you can just do a current state to object and then continue your sculpting. So that's all I wanted to show for that. Is there any questions about that?
Can you show the geometry of the
Yes.
resulting mesh, so everyone can see that there are now no stretched polygons anymore?
Yeah, let's get them side by side, shall we? Let's see, let's go like that. So on the left, you can see the stretching, and on the right, we don't have it. We have much more uniform distribution of polygons. Is that good?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see, we've got 10 minutes left. We definitely want to answer any other questions there are, but I think I'm going to toss it back over to Matt because it has been asked about the interior. Let's see, where can someone, wait, do I have to send it to Matt or can someone else do that? I'm trying to find the command. Oh, here we go. Matt and make presenter. You ready, Matt?
I am.
Okay. Yes, making Matt presenter.
Hey, I'm back.
I can see you.
Huzzah. So the last thing, just very quickly, was people have asked before, like, can I use this? I mean, one of the first things I ever thought about when volume building came up is how much easier it was going to make life for me for resin printing. Lots of software now when it comes to resin printing hollows things out for you, which is just a joy and really good. But if you want to hollow out your own objects, then I'm going to give you a really quick tip as well. So just file a new, and I'm going to create, funny enough, a cube. Very exciting with my models here about how to hollow stuff out. And I'm going to put that in a volume builder, in a volume mesher, and I'm going to make my voxels, let's do 2.5. So what we have a volume builder with a cube in it. Now, the best way of hollowing stuff out is to use itself. So you can use the geometry in order to make a copy, dilate and erode, and then take it away from itself. So if you are going to do this with models that you are 3D printing, you need to make sure that you have one model that it has all of the polygons in it, so that you just have a single polygonal mesh. And what I'm going to do, I am going to drag and drop the cube into the volume builder object section. So technically, my volume builder is referencing the cube twice, once as a child and once as a child, but re-referenced. Then what I'm going to do, I'm going to create a folder, and I'm going to put my second cube in the folder. And in this folder, I'm going to create my dilate and erode. Now, instantly, that makes the whole thing huge, and it's because it's over above everybody. So I'm going to put it in the folder here. And the offset, I'm going to put to -5 because I want it to take away from the geometry that I have. And then under my new folder, so this copy of itself, I'm going to do subtract. Now, from the outside, we can tell absolutely nothing about this whatsoever, but my object, my cube, is now hollow. So what I'm going to do, just as a demonstration, I'm going to create another cube, put that in here, and I'm going to make this cube bigger and wider and like this. And then I'm going to subtract this cube too. And you can see that my cube is now hollow. So that gives me the ability of seeing half of this cube. So this cube is just the cutaway cube. So you can pretty much ignore that for the demonstration. This is just to show you that this is hollow. If I have a look at what my folder is doing here with my dilate and erode, this -5 is choosing the thickness. So what it's taking away from the main cube. So if I increase that to, say, 15, you can see that the dilate and erode is now minusing the outside cube by 15, and I'm ending up with something that would have a 15 centimeter thickness. And you can obviously move that to 1, and I'll just have a 1 centimeter thickness of my 2 meter cube. And this is how to easily hollow out an object using itself as geometry for 3D printing. And the difference that makes is astronomical. So I've got models that I have used, and it uses 1/4 of the resin to print a hollow version than it does to create a solid version of something even as small as something like 10 centimeters wide. So it's a really useful tip if you don't or haven't got software that will do it, or you want a bit more control over it, then you can do it this way. Okay. Any questions on that? And we've actually got 5 minutes left.
Would that cutaway work technique to remove the backside of the cube if the cutaway went past the back?
What do you mean? Sorry, this cutaway is only just to demonstrate that my cube is hollow. I wouldn't, it's not what I would use for 3D printing. It's just a demo. Otherwise, you've got no way of telling that my cube is hollow.
Yeah, I'm not sure I understand the question either.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Let's see, can you have a... so Jason or Jason asked, can you have a volume with reference C4D objects? That way you could adjust them separately. Actually, that's what Matt did. For example, when he was doing the cable or the cord on the canister, he was adjusting the spline separately, and it was being used by the volume builder through the cloner.
By reference, he doesn't mean X-refs, does he?
I hope not.
Yes.
Ooh, Matt, this is right up your alley. What is your favorite 3D printer?
Oh, I'm not sure I'm allowed to say that, am I?
Oh,
I can't
okay.
be
Never mind.
favouring a particular brand of.
You can say that. You can say your personal favorite, and then we can give a legalistic phrase like this: other opinions are available.
Other opinions are available. Not so much favorite, but I've only ever played with one resin printer, which is a Anycubic Photon, and it's been brilliant for me as just a kind of entry-level resin printer. There are bigger and nicer ones that I would love to get my hands on, but they're expensive.
Was that a budget request, Matt?
Only for my own personal use.
Duly noted.
Is there anything else have we got? I'm just having a quick nose through some of the stuff. Can we do a super quick example of using alpha stamp to achieve a hard surface effect? I think that was probably more to do with the sculpting.
Yeah, that's more of a sculpting. We should find something in the calendar for sculpting.
Yeah, that's an idea. Martin has asked, does this process work on something more detailed like the cryo chamber? It would do, but you would need to make sure that you've made your cryo chamber editable and then put it in another volume builder to reference itself. So if I have a look at my cryo chamber window, because this is all separate elements, it's not really easy to reference itself. I would need to get to my volume builder, and then I would need to, well, I can make that editable, or I can do current state to object, and that would give me a polygonal version, which I would then put that in another volume builder to reference itself. So I've just got a single polygonal mesh. Yeah, that's it from me. So I don't know who's doing the closing statement. Is that you, Simon?
I'll do my facsimile of one. Yes. Let's see here if I can do this correctly. Here we go. Right, you should be able to, famous words, see my screen, which is the Maxon events page.
I see your camera.
You see your camera?
Can you not see it? Okay, let's see here. Stop showing screen, start showing it again. So
have you got a little pop-up that's asking you to allow your screen? Because at the moment it says waiting to view Simon's screen.
Yes, I do. So goodness. Here we go. We had a couple of great suggestions. Torrance had 2 good suggestions about a sculpting course and a 3D modeling course, which I thought were pretty fantastic.
You know, we're still just seeing cameras.
So let's try this again.
On my end, I'm only seeing the cameras.
So let's just show everything. Show.
We have a question and I can no longer answer it. I don't know why. The question is, while Simon works out his screens, if you have several objects merging through union, can you change the amount of curvature on the edges? Yes, you can. There is a close and open filter as well. And so in the same places where you can find the dilate and erode and the smoothing filter, there is a close and open filter. And again, if you put that in groups of where objects merge, you can control the curvature that it creates where they merge.
Yeah, and those filters only affect the objects underneath them in the list.
So if you've got all of the objects underneath, or if you want several objects, put them in a folder first and then create your filter in there.
Okay, let's try this.
Ah, quick poll.
A quick poll. Okay, so we found something that works. Since you had some of these great suggestions, would you mind sharing with us what you do in 3D in Cinema? And that is going to help us define more of these sessions as we go along through the year, because we had a couple of great suggestions for various topics, and we're limited to 5 on these things, because I know this isn't everything that you can do in 3D, but we kind of had to condense it down because we can only get 5 topics in a poll.
Well, look at this is the race, like 50% voted. Motion graphics is in the lead. Surely followed by 3D design at 57%.
Right, we'll give it another 10 seconds. And did you have another career as a racehorse announcer, Matt?
We need the countdown music. You've got 30 seconds left.
Okay, 1 minute. There we go. So share the results. And by a furlong, Motion Graphics has won, if you like.
Oh, no.
Furlong, not furlough. Yes.
Sorry. So yeah, majority of people
okay, so
motion graphics and 3D design.
So that's pretty useful. Thank you everyone for doing that. And that's going to help us add new sessions. And also, I wanted just to point out where future sessions were, but for a technical reason, let's go to webinar. My screen won't share. Hooray. So I can either mime it, or can somebody else get the Maxon events page up on their system, and then I can volunteer them to share, just so you can see it.
Jonas, you got that?
Ellie seems to be working on it.
Okay.
If the issue is due to Big Sur, I can't share mine either.
Oh, excellent. So tell you what, I'm going to ask you very nicely to, Jonas, to share your screen, or just that page, if I may.
I'm about to steal it from you.
Oh, yeah? Okay, Matt's jumping in. Everyone's so polite.
Can you see my screen? Oh, no, now it says waiting to view Jonas's screen and not mine. So what's going on here?
Okay, make Matt presenter then.
Body, then we are running webinar.
Aha.
Yes, exactly.
That's it. Apparently, I'm the only one who can be seen today. That's it. It's my turn.
Matt, would you mind going up to the news button right at the top? So if you go to maxon.net and click on news, then if you click on the events button, this is where we share not only the webinars we're doing, but all sorts of events internationally. So Vertex and FMX, for example, which are coming up in a few months' time. And I think Vertex is next month, February, isn't it?
Good grief. Yes, that's come around far.
So they're running things virtually this year. as are several others. But this is where you'll find out information about what we're doing. If you wanted to find out, for example, in a couple of weeks' time, we'll share what we're doing in February and March and in these various sessions. And I think right down at the bottom of the page, there's a Twitter link. This is great. This is always good to be live. Would you mind clicking on that Twitter link, Matt? And then if you scroll down to the post that was the 28th of December, then that'll just give you an indication of wheels. Oh, there it is. So there we go. If you just one more down, or up, I should say, where we had the image of your cryo tubes. There we go. So I know this is obvious. We share these invitations and the information about the stuff on Twitter, but there we go. That's what it looks like. So keep an eye out for that. In fact, Matt, would you mind clicking just on that to just look at the comment? There we go. So the comment there.
No.
Never mind. Never mind. It said, this is what I was going to share. It said, great training, keep it up. Thank you. So
if you click
I was going to accidentally share that.
If you click like that window, not the image, to the left of the image, it should open, not the actual comment thing.
Right, this might seem slightly self-serving at this point, but anyway.
Oh, and it's from David. Hey, David.
Yay,
Are you
David.
watching?
Hello,
Well,
David.
you too can be featured in the comments. And also, don't forget to go to our YouTube channel, where you can see all the recordings that we'll do this year and all the ones that we did last year. And we have hundreds of various videos of this fashion. And in fact, Matt is very skillfully going to be showing exactly where you can find this out.
Volume Maxon.
Volume team training it is.
Oh, I can't type.
There you go. Oh,
Maxon
fantastic.
Training Team training.
There we go. Using teams sometimes, including the recent ones that Darrin did expertly to feature Quixel workflows in Cinema and Redshift. So please have a look at those as well. And we also, in the comments on those or the description, we put out various links. And Ellie shared earlier on a link for the custom icons that you can install inside Cinema. So that'll be part of the email that you get, and we'll put that into the description on the YouTube site as well. Fantastic. So thank you everyone for spending this time with us. We're only 7 minutes over, except that obviously we never overrun.
Was there something else that we wanted to mention?
Probably is. There's Cineversity, there's all the other training channels we've got. There's the certification link I mentioned at the beginning, if you go onto the Maxon site as well.
What if they have a question about something that's not related to any of those videos?
Finishing it next Thursday.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert. So we may be well running next week. We're going to run an Ask the Trainer. So that we're going to run a session like this, which is all questions and answering. So we'll put the information on that on these socials and on that events page too. But we just wanted to open it up and ask, let you ask questions and watch us figure out in real time how to share a screen on GoToWebinar, or actually some more advanced questions. So it's a asking me anything, isn't it? Really, any topic on Cinema, really, or in fact the whole range of things that we do at Maxon. So all the Redshift and the Redshift stuff too.
Yep.
So we'll send you info about that, but that'll be quite exciting. That's in addition to all the demystifying series.
So join us next Thursday for if you've got any questions that are unrelated to this, or you've just got general information, and put 5 of us on the spot to see if we can figure it out for you.
Absolutely. Now, it's an interesting thing. In Britain, when you say next Thursday, you don't mean Thursday in 4 days' time. You mean Thursday next week.
I mean Thursday next week, yes.
Which is, but when you're on a tube train, you say next stop. It's the next stop, which is always weird. Cool. Okay, we better go now.
Thursday next week.
It'll be amazing. Yes, obviously. Cool. thank you so much, everyone, for
Thanks, everybody.
sharing this time. And we'll share more information about, including we had a merch question. Where can we get t-shirts? So the code that we were doing in December ran out, but we'll see if we can get you a new code by next week as well.
Right.
Cool.
Awesome.
Thanks, everyone.
Oh.
See
Bye,
you soon.
everyone.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.